Welcome to World Missions University's Teaching Techniques, Ministry 113. This is Lesson 8, Individual Differences. I've often said that if one of my students doesn't understand my lesson, it's not their fault, it's probably mine. I haven't yet found the right way to teach the student this lesson. I may need to change my approach, change my methods, change something until the student understands. In preparation for this class, you should read Teacher and Staff Development, Book 1, the chapter entitled The Teacher and Motivation. By the time you finish with this class, you will describe practical application of teaching methods given differences of intelligence, creativity, cognitive style, and motivation. Intelligence is measured not by training or education, but rather a combination of nature, the things a person inherits from their parents, and nurture, what's put into them after they're born. Nature is determined by our genes, both mutated and unmodified. Nature determines our physical appearance, such as skin color, hair color. Nature also has an effect on our personality characteristics. Those things that are part of our nurture include nutrition, especially as we are growing up, childhood experiences, social relationships, and culture. For example, children of those with chemical addictions such as alcoholism are more likely to grow up to be alcoholics themselves, not because of our genes, but rather the examples we are raised to emulate. Intelligence is determined by both nature and nurture. We measure a person's intelligence using an intelligence quotient, which is a rough way of measuring their reasoning ability. This intelligence quotient is often referred to as IQ. A person's score is derived from a set of standardized tests. The average IQ is 100. Take a look at this chart. Notice the average IQ scale for people of various levels of achievement in life. Notice that the average IQ of a college graduate is 112, above average. Shopkeepers are just a little above average. Those who do not complete high school or class 12 are generally below average. Those who only finish 6th grade are just as far below average as the college graduate is above average. When we measure the IQ of someone who is visibly mentally handicapped, we see the lowest scores. Anything below 50 is generally someone who cannot function at all, but would have to be cared for as if they were a baby. This intelligence quotient is often referred to as IQ. A person's score is derived from a set of standardized tests. Remember, the average IQ is 100. 68% of people, more than 2/3, will score within 15 points above or below average. 95% will score within 30 points above or below average. The top 2.5% is what we call gifted. The bottom 2.5% is what we call handicapped. What does this mean for your classroom? Most of your students will be in this green section. Let's divide this into thirds. If you teach especially to the bottom third, the lowest performers, most of your lessons will be very simple and everyone will achieve, but the top third will quickly lose interest. This may not be fair or just in some settings. If you teach to the top third, The highest performers, most of your lessons will be difficult, and the top third will achieve along with some of the middle third, but the bottom third will be hopelessly lost and will quickly drop out. This may not be fair or just in some settings. But if you teach to the middle third, the middle performers, your lessons will be difficult enough to challenge the bottom third and will keep the interest of most of the top third. We must admit that some of the bottom third will fail, and this may be appropriate in some settings. This is generally fair and just for most educational settings. Differences in creativity are also closely tied to IQ, but not always. You will likely have very creative students and some that are not imaginative at all. Placing them in pairs together, the creative with the unimaginative, can provide an opportunity for the unimaginative student to open up and see the advantages of expanding their thinking. One phrase for the creative might be, "If it ain't broke, break it." Consider the creative solution the apostles ordained when faced with the problem of the Greek widows. Consider the creative solution of Solomon when faced with two mothers claiming the same baby. Cluster students for group projects so that each member has a different level of creativity and allow them to teach each other. Teach for tomorrow's problems. When I first came into this truth, cell phones were large, bulky devices and in no way considered smart. Now, pastors are having to deal with these devices that by some estimates, people spend hours of their days gazing into their screens. Our students are going to be faced with things we haven't yet imagined. Vary your materials and methods. Even allow the students to have input, but certainly not the last word, into what and how they learn. This will more easily allow the creative to excel and minimize impediments and hindrances, as so often happens to those who are gifted creatively. We've spent some time understanding different cognitive styles. I remember what an old rabbi once told me, "Never assume that others think the way you do." I continually have to remind myself that my mind works differently, processes differently, and therefore can come to conclusions that may be different, yet equally valid than others might. How are you going to account for different ways of thinking that may be influenced by brain function or even by culture, time, and experience? There are clear steps to managing this in your classroom. First, you must recognize where each student is. What do they already know? When I teach the biblical concept of oneness to former Muslims, I teach it completely different than converts from other Christian Protestant denominations who see the Godhead through a Trinitarian bias. Second, don't let age fool you. Evaluate the students on their abilities. What can they do unaided? What can they do with help? And what can they not do yet? New topics should be presented in a moderate level of difficulty, not too easy and not too hard. Teach to the middle. Motivation has to be both intrinsic in the heart and mind of the student and extrinsic in the heart and mind of the teacher and projected to the student. We have too often depended on grades to provide extrinsic motivation. But an even greater motivator is the value of the knowledge we impart. When the student recognizes the value of what you're teaching, of what they can become to the kingdom, we also increase their intrinsic motivation, which is an even greater motivator than extrinsic. So how do we promote intrinsic motivation? This is one of the hardest things for the teacher to accomplish, but yields the greatest dividends. First, convince all the students that they can learn and grow and develop. Praise their progress. This will allow you to build a culture of learning. Develop a sense of solidarity, of bonding, of fellowship, rather than a competitive spirit. Have high expectations for your students and communicate them clearly with goals and objectives. Finally, be an example of success as a learner. For the next lesson, read Ministry to People with Disabilities, A Biblical Perspective.